Hello everyone, my name is Taras Pshakis. I am a 4th form student at Anatolia High School in Thessaloniki. In today's video, I will be covering the topic of how does the greenhouse effect problem influence the global economy. To begin with, I'd like to give a broad overview of the two key terms. First of all, a global economy means an economic interdependence established between the most influential countries that drives the worldwide economic environment. It is also the aggregate economic output, movement, and influence of all countries. The global economy can be defined as each individual country's economy added together, but that is not the only way to portray how the world economy works. The 20 largest economies account for 80% of the world's economic output, and the 5 biggest economies are big enough to impact the whole world with their developments. If one of these 5 economies suffer from a natural disaster or any event that causes an economic downturn, you have sequels on the global economy due to the interconnections caused by international trade. On the other hand, global financial markets are also ruled by the biggest economies, since they possess a big load of resources that can be used to finance other countries' endeavors and projects. These highly influential countries can understand the leverage they possess by having these huge economic systems, and they often employ them to push political agendas. The second central term is the greenhouse effect. It's the process that occurs when greenhouse gases in the atmosphere trap the sun's heat. These radiatively active gases in the planet's atmosphere radiate energy in all directions. Part of this radiation is directed towards the surface, thus warming it. Earth's natural greenhouse effect is critical to supporting life, and initially was a precursor to life, moving out of the ocean onto land. Human activities, mainly the burning of fossil fuels and clear cutting of forests, have increased the greenhouse effect and caused global warming. Moving on to the presentation's motion, I will proceed to analyze how climate change, and specifically the greenhouse effect problem, impacts the economy. According to Schroders, the overall aggregate effect of climate change on economic growth will most likely be negative in the long run. Although there will be winners and losers from climate change at varying levels of warming, the impact of rising temperatures will be widespread, in part due to the financial, political, and economic integration of the world's economies. The greenhouse effect problem, as well as its aftermath, global warming, will primarily influence economic growth through damage to property and infrastructure, lost productivity, mass migration, and security threats. The balance between winners and losers turns increasingly negative as temperatures rise. Global warming is expected to increase the frequency and severity of extreme weather events, bringing with it property and infrastructure loss. The likes of Hurricane Sandy, which flooded much of New York in 2012, are prime examples of the economic damage such extreme weather events can cause. Rising sea levels will also likely harm economic output as businesses become impaired and people suffer damage to their homes. Global warming is likely to contract supply at any given price and result in a backward shift of the supply curve. As the diagram demonstrates, this will result in a low level output and higher price. Inflation is likely to rise as shortages emerge, particularly in agriculture. The diagram not only shows a reduction in output, but an increase in the general price level as a result of the greenhouse effect problem. This leads us onto the possible inflationary effect of the greenhouse effect on the world economy. Furthermore, I'd like to highlight the detrimental outcome in the short-term future unless worldwide action is taken. Based on the New York Times, climate change could cut the world economy by 23 trillion US dollars in 2050. Rising temperatures due to greenhouse gases are likely to reduce global wealth significantly by 2050 as crop yields fall, disease spreads, and rising seas consume coastal cities. The effects of climate change can be expected to save 11% to 14% of global economic output by 2050, compared with growth levels without climate change, according to a report from Swiss Re. That amounts to as much as 23 trillion USD in reduced annual global economic output worldwide as a result of climate change. Moreover, let's take a look at how certain Celsius degrees above the world's current temperature will affect the economy. As I mentioned earlier, greenhouse gases that get trapped in the planet's atmosphere warm its surface. Bearing that in mind, a single Celsius degree increase will provoke impairing outcomes such as health risks, sea level rise, food inflation, and extreme weather conditions. Now, let's take a closer look at the latter one. Regarding extreme weather, likes of droughts, blizzards, wildfires, and so on and so forth, cause critical damage to regions which cost astronomical amounts of funds to repair. A prime example is the US, where in a 40-year span from 1980 to 2020, damages from hurricanes only reached nearly 1 trillion. From this point on, any further increase in the planet's temperature will constitute the beginning of the end for humanity. For instance, a 2 Celsius degree increase would be so severe that polar ice caps would melt, increasing sea levels. Droughts, deforestation, and warming oceans would release massive amounts of natural sources of greenhouse gases. This would create a feedback loop that could raise the temperature by 5 Celsius degrees in the long term. Last but not least, I'd like to emphasize the difference between taking precautions next to not acting at all. According to Stern Exhibition in 2006, it would cost approximately 1% of the world's combined GDP annually to initiate the damages caused by the greenhouse effect problem. Although, if we were to take no action at all, the cost would be at least 5%, and in the worst case scenario, up to 20% of the world's combined GDP annually to bounce back from the catastrophes. Therefore, only a small portion of the world's GDP in a low carbon emissions economy would be needed to be invested in order to repel the disasters of the greenhouse effect problem. But also, it would give back healthier living conditions, enhance energy security, and limit other damages. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention along the way, and hopefully I achieved my goal of breaking down such a crucial matter in a comprehensible manner. For anyone interested in the citation, I will embed my sources in the description. That's all for today.